All right, and welcome back to the YouTube channel. Pretty okay day. We went 3-2 on our five main plays. Seton Hall was pretty sweaty pretty much the entire game. They kind of kept falling behind, especially after the first half, but they were able to lock back in. Providence really let the back in that game. The home crowd started to get going, and unfortunately they still lost, but they did cover the +4. Georgia I would say relatively non-sweat. They kind of dominated most of the game. Near the end, they kind of allowed South Carolina back in the game a little bit, but they pulled right back away. Ended up winning by, I believe, 11 or 10. Ohio, this was just a tight game, neck and neck, pretty much the entire time. They were down at half. They got back up. They were leading for some points in the second half, but ultimately they end up losing that game. Both teams shot really well. Unfortunately, Toledo just shot a little bit better. Akron, this one could have cashed. I think they were up 14 or 15 with like 4 minutes left, but they completely turned off the gas. Unfortunately, in the first half, they only had a 4-point lead, so they really had to push harder in the second, and it was pretty clear that it was, two very different quality teams, and Akron, for whatever reason, maybe because they were on the road, they just didn't look like they were trying that hard in the final 5 minutes. Kind of just not playing any defense. So, fortunately, I think they win by 12 or 14. They don't cover. And Pittsburgh, pretty sweaty for the pretty much 35 minutes. It was pretty neck and neck. Both teams going back and forth on runs, but the home team typically takes over the game in the final minutes, especially in this kind of environment. So Pittsburgh ends up winning that game by 7 or 8. So we take the Green Days. Let's get into the games for tomorrow. All right, game number 1, we have Samford versus Furman. Now, these are basically two teams that do the exact same thing. And they also are both two teams that are due for a lot of negative regression. But, these teams, they both hook up a shit ton of threes. Samford is a little bit more diverse in that they also play a bit closer to the basket. And they're extremely aggressive on defense. And when I look at these two teams, I just don't understand this line. Yes, Samford is due for some regression, but statistically, this Samford team is significantly better. They're 78th in offensive efficiency. Furman is 185th in offensive efficiency. Furman is 194th in defense efficiency. Samford is 114th in defensive efficiency. So the Samford team, they are ranked 39th in three-point percentage against Furman's 147th in three-point percentage. If you look at the other side, Samford is 118th at defending the three to Furman's 245th in three-point percentage. And then on the other side, the Samford team is extremely aggressive on defense. They're ranked number 9th in college basketball in potential points off of steals. And on the other side, this Furman team turns the ball over a lot. They're ranked 282 in turnovers. So this just seems like a weird spot. Really, the only thing that's going here for Furman is that they are at home, and they may have some more success at the line. Not really, though. They don't shoot the free throw very well. It feels almost like a trap line. I think Samford is just the better of these two teams that hook up threes, but Samford is a little bit more diverse and will find other ways to score. And they also have a significantly better advantage at the line. If you look a bit more into their power ratings, this Furman team, they don't play better at home by any means. Samford plays only slightly worse on the road. They're the best in their conference at their away rating. So I don't think there's going to be a huge advantage there with Furman playing in front of their home crowd. And if you look at kind of their rating versus certain levels of teams against top 100 teams, this Furman team is ranked 177th, and Samford against ranked 100 to 200 teams is in the top 100. So I think this is a phenomenal matchup for them. As away favorites, they are technically 2-5, but they are technically road dogs where they're 1-1. They haven't been a phenomenal road team. But this Furman team hasn't necessarily been a great home team either. They're 2-4 as home favorites. They're 3-4 as home team in general. Both these teams have covered the spread pretty much equally all year. The last few times that Samford has had to travel over 200 miles, they've won all 4 of those games. They beat West Carolina, South Carolina State, Mercer, and Chattanooga in the month of January and December. On the other side, this Furman team has lost twice at home in their last 4 home games, and they barely beat a pretty shitty East Tennessee State team. They lost to Chattanooga and Wilford on the road. The only other team they beat is some no-name team. This just feels like a complete trap line, but I think this is a phenomenal spot to back the Samford team against a Furman team that is significantly worse, in my opinion. All right, heading into game number 2, we have North Texas heading on the road to play Wichita State. Now, this Wichita State team, they were okay to start the year, but the second they've hit this conference play, they've been really bad. They are 1-6 against the spread in conference play. And this North Texas team historically has kind of owned this Wichita State team. Every time they do beat them, they crush them. They've beaten them by 10 twice. And if you really look at most statistical categories, North Texas is the better team. Now, I have taken North Texas on the road before, and they just completely did not show up. But I think now that the team is gelling a bit more, this is kind of a fantastic spot to play them. So North Texas, they have the better record quality. They've played a harder schedule. They play better on the road than Wichita does play at home. They're a consistent team now. And the way they like to score is, mid-range shots and second chance opportunities. They have pretty favorable advantages on offense, and they're one of the better free throw shooting teams in the nation. Wichita State doesn't foul that much, but if it does come push to shove, North Texas will find their free throws. They're 18th in the nation in free throw attempts per game. They'll find some success on the boards, but on the other side, this Wichita State team, it kind of sucks. Like they shoot mid-range near basket shots and try to get second chance opportunities, but those are all things that this North Texas team defends well. They're the 60th best defensive team in the nation, and it doesn't seem to dip much when they go on the road. So if you look a bit further into their power ratings, this North Texas team, since playing conference, has been dominant, and Wichita State has been terrible. North Texas is top 50 in their performance in conference games, and Wichita State is even outside of the top 250. If you look at the home, Wichita does play slightly better at home, but North Texas plays much better on the road. They're actually they have a higher rating when playing on the road versus at home. And in terms of the type of rating matchup, they are one of the better teams at crushing these mid-major schools. So this Wichita team is going. These two teams are going completely different directions, in my opinion. North Texas has won their last 5. They won 9 of their last 10, covering in 7 of them. Wichita State, they've lost 6 of their last 7. Their only win is against a outside of ranked top 200 Charlotte. They just lost to Tulsa. They lost to East Carolina. They're getting crushed by teams that are so much worse than this North Texas team. So barring some crazy something I'm missing, I'm not really sure. I think this is a pretty short spread for a pretty solid North Texas team that has kind of just been locked in. Again, the Wichita State team still has 2 early injuries from the beginning of the season, and so they are missing some key pieces that they had from last year. I think North Texas goes in there and just completely shits on them, especially defensively. I think Wichita State is going to struggle to score, and North Texas, they're not a fantastic offensive team, but I think they're good enough to get the job done. So it's that game number 2. Give me North Texas as road favorites at 4.5. All right, game number 3. We have DePaul heading on the road to play UConn. Now, this UConn team, I still feel like a lot of people are looking at them as shitty because they had one of the worst in-conference tournaments to start the year where they went 0-3. But this DePaul team, I'm going back to fading them on the road. Now, I got burned last time I faded them on the road in literally the only road game that they've won. Just one of those obscure teams shooting performances. But I think this UConn team, offensively, top 15 in the nation. They're going to find success pretty easily against this pretty terrible DePaul team. The only thing DePaul does well is that they don't foul very much. But this UConn team has enough talent where they don't really need to get to the line to get points up. DePaul on the other side, they're a decent offense. They're top 100. And they may probably find some success from 3. It's kind of something that UConn has struggled to defend. But UConn has had to defend significantly harder competition, especially teams that shoot a lot of threes. And I think that's going to allow them to have that stat kind of I don't want to say underinflated, but I think they're better at defending the 3 than it shows. If you look at how the most recent games that these two teams have played, DePaul, they're not a good team. Like, they have lost 7 of their last 8. They got crushed by Creighton at home. They lost a Butler team that's been struggling. They lost that game by 17. They beat Georgetown by 5, but we just watched Georgetown get absolutely obliterated by SMU or St. John's. So I think they've had a little bit of a fluky streak there against some good teams. They just get kind of shit on. They lost to Villanova by 44. UConn on the other side, yeah, they had that little weird stretch. They lost 3 games in a row to Memphis, Colorado, Dayton. But since then, they've been rolling. And they definitely have better performances after losses. They've lost 3 of their last 5 to Xavier, Creighton, and Villanova. And they barely beat a Butler team. They beat a Georgetown team by 12, a team that beat DePaul by 5. I just think this UConn team has not been performing up to standards. These games have been way too close. They haven't blown out a team yet, really at all this year. And if you look at the specific power ratings between the two teams, UConn is a better team at home, obviously. But man, this DePaul team falls outside the top 200 when they go on the road. I just think this UConn team in this environment is going to be too much for them. I think this UConn team, as they get closer to the big tournament, where they are defending champions, so we know they're going to get there. The last 5 matchups that these two teams have played, UConn has been over double-digit favorites, and they've covered all 5 of those games. They kind of own this poverty team. I think this number is going to move overnight to probably 15 or 16. So I really like to grab it at this spot. I think this is a good spot for this UConn team to finally gain some confidence here and absolutely crush this DePaul team. Obviously, it's a bit scary because McNeely is still going to be out for this game. It's a top 3 scorer for UConn. But again, I don't think that's going to be a problem against this DePaul team that just sucks. They just suck. So give me UConn to cover this pretty significant home favorite line. All right, game number 4, we have Illinois Chicago heading on the road to play Bradley as 8.5-point dogs. Now, these two teams played recently, where Illinois Chicago was at home, and Bradley beat them by 1. So I think this is going to be one of those situations where this Illinois Chicago is going to be fired up because they just lost to this Bradley team barely. And I think they're going to go into their court, and they're going to try to prove to them that, kind of try to do the same thing. I think Bradley probably still wins the game in the end. But I do think this Illinois Chicago team is extremely feisty. And they are incredibly good at covering games when they're playing on the road. If you look at their last few games, they are 6-0 as the away underdog this year. Bradley is 4-5 as home favorites. UIC is 13-5 overall at just covering games. They're one of the top teams at covering. And if you look at, I don't like to look at regression too much because I don't think it's typically means a lot. But this Bradley team, they are at the very top of the, regression leaderboard. They are the number 1 team that is due for a lot of negative regression. You can look at a few different sites, but on Shot Quality Bets, I'm seeing this as they're 17-3 record-wise, but their shot quality record suggests they should be 10-10. So this is a team that is completely overperforming. They've been shooting a lot of threes, and they've been falling at way too high of a rate. I think the fact that Illinois Chicago kept this game to 1 possession before. Illinois Chicago has played significantly better on the road this year than they have played at home. And opposite for Bradley, they've actually played better on the road than they have at home. So this is kind of like these two teams just played where Illinois kept it within 1. Now Illinois is going to a spot where they typically play better, and Bradley is going to a spot where they typically play worse. And yes, Bradley has been playing extremely well lately. But again, a lot of this is just coming to regression. I just don't think they're actually this good of a team. They've won 10 of their last 11 games. Their only loss was to Drake. But the Illinois Chicago team, they've been scrappy. They beat this Drake team that just beat Bradley. They may not be the highest rated team, but they are a scrappy team that keeps games close. They're well coached. I think they can keep this game within the 8 number. So give me UIC as 8.5-point underdogs. Heading into our final game in terms of the top 5 most confident. We got Nevada heading on the road to play Boise State. Boise is short seven-point favorites at home. Now, this Boise team has played really well at home. They are 5-3 against the spread at home. This Nevada team is 1-4 against the spread on the road. And these two teams, if you look at their most recent games, this seems like a phenomenal bounce-back spot for Boise. Now, Nevada, they also have coming off a 2-game loss streak where they got crushed by Utah State and then crushed again by San Diego State. I think their confidence is going to be at an all-time low against these top-rated teams. All the teams that they have been beating are terrible. Like, yes, they won 3 before that, but they beat San Jose State, Air Force, and Fresno, teams that are not even close to the top 100. And then before that, they'd play a bunch of other good teams again. They lost to New Mexico, Utah State. They even lost to Wyoming, Colorado State. I don't think they have a single impressive win this year other than VCU in the in-game tournament and a Santa Clara team that they dominated. But that was all the way back in November. They have not looked nearly as good. And this Boise State team, kind of a similar situation. But they did beat a St. Mary's team that has lost very few games. They beat a decent Clemson team. They beat a decent UNLV team. But now they're coming off 2 road losses. Now they're coming back into their barn where they do play their best basketball. If you look at individual home versus away ratings, Boise State, one of the best teams at home. They're 30th in the nation. They have the second best home advantage next to Pittsburgh. And on the other side, we've got Nevada team who plays much worse on the road. They're out once they hit the road, they're outside of the top 100 in projected ranking. If you look at their last 5, the projected ranking is almost in the bottom 200. They've been playing really bad as of lately, and against high quality teams, they play much worse basketball. Against top 50 teams, they're 117th in the nation, and this is a Boise State team that shows up pretty well against every single type of team. I think this Boise team is going to show up on this bounce back spot against a Nevada team that doesn't play well on the road. Boise State needs to get back on track here. They're not a particularly bad Mountain West team, but I feel like they're better than 13-7. They have pretty much all the momentum, great home court. They've been the better team this year. And if you look at matchups, yes, Nevada will have a decent matchup. This Boise State team is not like an offensive juggernaut by any means. But this Nevada team isn't that. They're not incredible at shooting. They're top 70 in everything, and Boise is whatever. But if they miss shots, this Boise State team takes care of the ball, and they take care of their boards. So Nevada has to be making their shots, which they just haven't really been doing on the road. And this Nevada team, or Boise State team, they are just a paint team. They love to play in the paint, and if they can find space, they'll throw it out to the 3. And near basket, they're the 17th best team in near basket percentage, and Nevada cannot. That's the only thing they can't defend. They are 300th in near basket defense. So I think Boise is going to bully them in the paint, and they're going to get much easier points. They're going to get a lot more free throws, and they shoot the free throw much better. They're 33rd in the nation in free throw percentage to Nevada's 310th in the nation. There's a big 10% discrepancy there. So when push comes to shove, I think Boise is going to grind this game out. Nevada's only way, in my opinion, of covering is if they just get extremely hot from 3. But I just don't see that happening on the road in this extremely loud Boise environment where they have just been dominant. So give me Boise as my final game of my top 5. All right, and those are my top 5 games. I have 7 bonus bets. Bonus bets did not perform well yesterday, but they have some pretty frustrating games. So I do think, again, these are bets that I bet at a smaller unit size. You don't really have to tail them, but if you are tailing, I'll give you a bit of a rundown of why I like them. Now, Oklahoma State, they've been a pretty grindy Big 12 team. Like, they keep games close against elite teams. But I just think this matchup against Kansas State, on paper, is going to be tough for them. If you look at where Kansas State likes to shoot, they're a basket team, and they get a lot of points off steals and second chance opportunities. Oklahoma State does not defend anything really well at all. If you really look at what they defend well, they're ranked 96 in defensive efficiency. But yeah, I don't see where they're going to stop Kansas State team that is one of the best near basket teams in the nation. And on the other side, this Oklahoma State team, They also like to live in the paint and mid range. But Kansas State, eighth best team against the mid range. They have they don't have not the best team at defending the paint, but Oklahoma State is outside the top 200 in near paint experience. They kind of rely on getting those second chance opportunities and steals. But man, this Kansas State team, second best team in the nation at not giving up turnovers. So I think at home they're going to keep this game close. Oklahoma State is going to have to work for every single point, and I think it'll be slightly easier for this Kansas State team to score than Oklahoma State. I don't think this is as big of a mountain to climb for Oklahoma State, so I don't think they're going to be mentally as driven to show up against like other teams that they've been playing. But I do think the spread is too short. LaSalle on paper is a much better team than Fordham. Fordham, I think they're only going to find some success in scoring here off of steals, but I don't find points off steals to be a consistent way of getting points, just because I think at home they're going to kind of lock in a little bit here. But LaSalle team, they're nothing fancy. They're a pretty solid defensive team. If you look at where Fordham likes to score, historically they shoot threes in near basket. LaSalle is a solid 3-point defense team. They're 80th in the nation, and this Fordham team's not really good offensively. You don't really have to be worried about them getting shots off because they're outside the top 200 in every single type of shot. LaSalle, they shoot up a lot of mid range. They're going to have a significant advantage, and they're also going to have a big advantage of getting points off steals and off offensive boards. So I think at home here, where they have played significantly better than almost any team. If you look at their home to whatever edge to Fordham, this LaSalle team has played much better at home. They are ranked 111th at home, and this Fordham is 194th on the road. So I think this is a great game for this LaSalle team to get a pretty confident win against a somewhat struggling Fordham team. Fordham finally got a win after losing 6 in a row against a Duquesne team at home, but this LaSalle team, I think, is just going to have a field day with them here after some confidence after beating a solid Rhode Island team. So give me LaSalle as 4.5-point favorites. Alabama, this Mississippi State team, I think they had a great start to the season. Don't get me wrong, but I think this Alabama team is going to be a bit too much for them. Yes, when it comes to SEC games, I do like to lean the home team. But this Alabama team, they have played the gauntlet. They've played the hardest schedule in college basketball, and they are 17-3. This team is really good. They have showed up in big moments. I just don't see a world where this Mississippi State team is going to be able to stop them. They play at the fastest pace in the nation. They make you run. It's an absolutely exhausting thing to watch. And I don't think this Mississippi State team has what it takes. Alabama, they like to shoot mid-range, near basket shots, threes. Actually, they don't shoot any mid-range, just threes and near basket. And they're going to have probably some decent success offensively, especially when it comes to offensive boards. And if you look more on the other side, this Mississippi State team, they aren't going to find as much success where they typically do, where they rely a lot on points off steals and boards. Alabama has pretty good with taking care of the ball. They're one of the best outside of the paint defense team. So the Mississippi State team is going to have to try to find some success in the paint, where Alabama is probably going to keep trying to get points off steals off them. So I don't know. I think this is going to be too tall of a task for the Mississippi State team. Alabama has just played too many good teams, and they've showed up in every single moment, and I don't think Mississippi State team is good enough. Again, number 4, FSU. This is just a bounce back spot. This Florida State team has been cruising lately, and they kind of slowed down a little bit. And I think this is a great spot for them against this pretty average Virginia Tech team. I think offensively and defensively, FSU is the much better team, and now we're getting them at home against a pretty mid FSU, a pretty mid Virginia Tech team, who really has not impressed me at all. This Florida State team plays really well at home. They're almost borderline top 50 when they're playing at home. VTech has played better on the road, but against this level of quality of opponent, they don't really show up to these type of games. They kind of prefer to shit on really bad teams or really good teams. But when it comes to mid teams, they really don't show up nearly as big. But this Florida State team, they do show up in pretty much every single type of game. In terms of versus ranks 100 to 200, they're 40th best in the nation. So I think they show up big to this game. They're coming off a 2-loss away streak against Stanford and California. They're heading back home against a VT team that has been struggling. They lost their last 3 against some pretty mid teams in Georgia Tech, Clemson, and Wake Forest. Yeah, I think this is a spot for Florida Tech to just completely roll. George Mason. Now, George Mason has played a lot of close games. It's why, I love this matchup against Loyola Chicago. It almost made my top 5. I think they are the way better offensive team and way better defensive team. They're top 27 in the nation. I think they're going to completely stump this Loyola team that kind of relies on points in the paint and 3. George Mason is the 12th best team at defending the near basket, 72nd in 3-point percentage. They don't let you get boards. And I think at home they don't turn the ball nearly as much as on the road. So I think the one spot where Loyola might find some success, I don't think it's going to help them. On the other side, George Mason is going to have no problem scoring, especially when it comes to free throws. I think they're going to get a lot of points from just free points at the line. And they're going to get a metric ton of points off that. They're going to dominate the boards this game on both sides. So I think this is just a great spot with a pretty short spread for a home team. I really like the spot for George Mason, even though they haven't really covered too much when it comes to lines greater than -5. West Georgia, this is just a disgusting game. I always got to take one dog shit game just to see if I can figure them out. But West Georgia, they played a much harder schedule. I think they're the better team. And if you look at where they like to get points, this West Georgia team is one of the best teams at converting second chance opportunities. They're 24th against the average opponent, and now they're playing a really bad opponent, and they're ranked 24th in second chance opportunity percentage. If you look at UCA, they don't do anything well, really. Like, this just feels like a game where this West Georgia team, newly ranked, like playing, on the road. I think they're going to show up here, and the difference is going to be the offensive rebounds. And the last game, my least favorite game of the day. These are also in order of confidence, if it wasn't clear. I just think this UNCG team is a slightly better version of this ETSU team. I think UNCG is going to show up defensively, especially when it comes to where ETSU typically likes to score, which is, hucking up threes. This is UNCG is the 24th best team at defending the 3. And on the other side, UNCG, what do they like to do? Huck up threes. And, does ETSU defend that nearly as well? No. Now you have a favorable matchup where UNCG is 88th in the nation, a 3-point percentage, against 240th in 3-point defense. I think this is going to be a matchup of 2 teams that are going to be hucking up threes. UNCG has played significantly harder opponents, and we're getting them at home on the money line. I don't know. I think this is a great spot to back the Spartans. So, yeah, these are the 12 games that I'm going to be betting in college basketball tomorrow. This is probably one of my favorite slates I've had in a long time in terms of how confident I am in games. Hopefully that ends up being true, because this is college basketball and shit hits the fan really quickly. We saw that fucking Kentucky game where I'm still pissed about that under not hitting, because Kentucky shot 50% from 3 against literally the number 1 3-point defense. So sometimes statistical matchups don't actually end up coming true. Teams just sometimes show up way better than they should be. So that's everything. If you have any questions on any opinions on any games, totals, comment them down below, and I'll give you my opinion on each game. And thank you so much for listening, and I will talk to you guys tomorrow.